Now we join Bob Woolman for an ITV News Central special programme, live from Birmingham, looking at the future of High Speed 2 in the Midlands.
Hello and welcome to ITV News Central, live from Curzon Street Station in Birmingham, the planned terminus for the controversial High Speed 2 project. After a decade of uncertainty, the Prime Minister gives HS2 the go-ahead.
The Cabinet has given high-speed rail the green signal. We are going to get this done.
So how green is that signal? And how will concerns about spiralling costs, delays and another review of part of the route be addressed?
Costs are already escalating. People are rightly concerned that the project appears to be out of control.
Tonight, we'll hear from those for and those against, including people concerned about the environmental impact. Good evening, you join me live from the West Midlands hub for High Speed 2, Curzon Street. It'll be the flagship station for the project, and today the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, confirmed that it will go ahead following a review that he commissioned last year. A revised schedule for the project has been set out. Let's take a look at that. Phase 1 from London to Birmingham. This is now due to be completed between 2028 and 2031, not 2026. This phase also now includes the section from Birmingham to Crewe. Phase 2 from Crewe to Manchester and Birmingham to Leeds via the East Midlands is due to be completed between 2035 and 2041 instead of the original target of 2033. Well, this project has been divisive ever since its inception, and here are just some of your stories that you shared with us over the past decade. Well, tonight we'll be looking at pros and cons throughout tonight's programme. And first, let's cross live now to our political correspondent, Alison Mackenzie, who's been following today's developments in Westminster. And Alison, is this the final green light for HS2?
It certainly is the green light from the Prime Minister. We've been waiting for days, for weeks for this announcement. It's come tonight. And he says, yes, he's all in favour. He's read that review. He knows of the spiralling costs. He says it should go ahead, although there was a slight pause on Phase 2B. But yes, he says he wants HS2. This is how it all happened today.
Tailored landscape design and tree planting will blend the railway into its surroundings, while new wetlands and river diversions will support wildlife and reduce flood risk.
It sounds fantastic, a favourite word for the Prime Minister when describing big projects he believes can secure a strong and prosperous future for the East Midlands. That's why he said yes to HS2.
This is about finally making a rapid connection from the West Midlands to the Northern Powerhouse, to Liverpool, to Manchester, to Leeds, and simultaneously permitting us to go forward with Northern Powerhouse Rail.
However, there will be a consultation on the costs before completing the Y plan of the route to Leeds via the East Midlands and from Crewe to Manchester. The first Midlands MP on his feet to say congratulations, Andrew Mitchell.
A comprehensive announcement today will be very widely welcomed across the West Midlands and in Birmingham, and nowhere more so than in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield. Will he today pay tribute to the superb leadership marshalling the arguments of our West Midlands Mayor Andy Street?
But opposing views from other MPs.
Sir William Cash.
The Prime Minister knows how bitterly disappointed my constituents in Staffordshire will be about the decision. Could I simply ask him, when he's considering the question of review, to include Phase 2A from Birmingham to Crewe and the rest of that part of the constituency which is going to be so badly affected, because we need to have a proper link with Handsacre to make sure that Stoke and Stafford are properly serviced. Does he understand that, and will he do everything to make sure that we're kept in the review?
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. On Handsacre, he has my full support.
I'm less than enthusiastic about the route of HS2, which neither connects with Eurostar nor with Birmingham New Street or indeed with St Pancras.
Another big critic, Lord Berkeley, on the Oakervie panel, extremely concerned about the ever-increasing costs.
Now, the cost estimate I produced with colleagues for the whole project was 106 billion. I think for phase one it'll be well over 50. But of course the big problem they have is that the benefits, they almost fiddled the figures by suggesting that the high-speed line can take 18 trains an hour.
But Lord Berkeley's concerns rejected on the day Boris Johnson said yes.
Well, afterwards he left the Commons. I'm going to assume he got on a train, but he came right up to Birmingham straight away with the good news. But he says, is aware of the impacts on the environment, the concerns of local people and those angry people who are saying it shouldn't go ahead. This is his response to us this afternoon.
The Treasury, if they had got their way, would have stopped the M25. The Treasury would never have allowed the Channel Tunnel to go ahead. HS2 actually has a better business case today than the M25 had back then. Everybody always tries to stop big infrastructure projects at round about this moment.
Of course, it doesn't mean the end of scrutiny, the end of checking, the end of people finding out exactly their plans. There's all those issues over compensation, as we know. It doesn't going to go ahead very simply, but it is a momentous day here. I've stood here for 10 years saying, will it happen? It hasn't happened yet, but according to Boris Johnson, it's just around the corner.
Alison, thanks for that. Well, what have Midlanders made of today's announcement? We've been gauging reaction in Kenilworth in Warwickshire.
I can see for some people it's going to be quite difficult, and obviously some people are against all the sort of the trees being cut down and the area being cleared to make way for it. I think there is a very much of a north-south divide, and I think we do need to be able to link up to London and other parts of the country more quickly.
I'm very happy with the way I go to London at the moment, and I can't see that I would want to go to Coventry and then change and go to Birmingham to go down to London. I can't envisage myself doing that at all in the future.
For the country as a whole, yeah, it's got to be a good thing, I think. If you can improve the infrastructure of the travel system, the railway network, absolutely, all for it.
Most companies now have internet voice where they can talk to each other on the internet, so there's no need for this high-speed rail connection for business, really, in that respect.
I believe there's a need for increasing infrastructure. I would like to see HS2 built from Birmingham to Leeds and Manchester, but not necessarily from London to Birmingham. I think that's where the need is, in the north, not in the south.
Well, in a few minutes' time, we'll be speaking to the Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street. But now let's bring in our correspondent, Andy Bevan, who's been following the many twists and turns of this story over the last decade. And Andy, let's go into more detail about today's announcement.
Well, yes, Bob. I mean, two things happened today. First was the official release of the much-leaked government Oakervie review into the future of HS2, and the second was the Prime Minister announcing that he wants HS2 to go ahead, largely based on that Oakervie review. The Oakervie review says more or less go ahead and build the lot, with a few exceptions. One of those exceptions you heard about a few minutes ago in Alison's report, Handsacre Junction near Lichfield. That would provide, if linked with HS2, connections to Stafford and Stoke-on-Trent. The problem is that the Oakervie review, if Boris goes along with it of course, says that the Handsacre Junction should be scrapped because of costs. Now that is something that has Midlands Connect, which champions transport links across the Midlands, very worried.
So, I mean, if that shake-up happens...
Handsacre Junction, in terms of levelling up, which is what it's all about, into Staffordshire and Stoke. This is very important for that part of the world. It's very important for us in the rest of the Midlands to be able to connect to them too.
Well, this afternoon a VIP group toured the Curzon Street site here, among them Boris Johnson. He was sighted from our balcony here with having his photograph taken with a few apprentices. But the team was led around the site by the CEO of HS2, Mark Thurston, and therein lies another possible problem for this project, because the Prime Minister's made no secret of his opinion of HS2 as a company as it stands at the moment. This morning he said the company had hardly distinguished itself in the handling of local communities. He said HS2 is likely to be broken up, with the current organisation ending up just in charge of phase 1.
So what could that mean, a shake-up, what could that mean for passengers and for the people living along the route?
Well, for the people living along the route, many of whom are still fighting for compensation for homes and businesses that they've lost as the rail line goes through, they will be hoping for a kinder, gentler HS2 in future, probably. As for the passengers, well, they can't really express their opinion yet because the line isn't built, but judging by the opinions of people we spoke to on the Leicester to Birmingham route today on conventional lines, they could do with some improvements.
In rush hour and peak times, quite often there aren't enough carriages for local services, and when you do get onto a train there's not enough seats, there's not enough space, which can sometimes feel quite dangerous.
I'd like to see it spent on obviously faster times. I'd like to see the money spent on trying to get the ticket prices down reasonable.
I would prefer this bit here to be wide enough for the pushchair to come in. Otherwise it's okay, it's not that bad. Just the space-wise is a problem.
I think there should be more carriages on the trains really, especially at peak times. I've been there on a Saturday and what have you, and you're like shoulder to shoulder. You know, you shouldn't be like that on a train, especially children.
Just cheaper fares, because every time I use it, which is to see relatives, the fares go up and up and up.
So Andy, in reality, when are we going to see the tracks being laid and new stations popping up?
Well, that's still to be decided, but HS2 Phase 1 has got parliamentary approval. It's had that since February 2017. What it needs now is something called a notice to proceed, and in order for it to do that, it has to produce a full business case. Now that's accurate costs against accurate benefits presented to Parliament. The problem is with that is that the National Audit Office a couple of weeks ago came out and said that as it stands at the moment, the project, the costs of the project far outweigh the benefits of it. So it's difficult to see how Boris Johnson has managed to reconcile all this in order to put the case forward today. But he has, and as a result of that, we could see shovels in the ground in a matter of weeks.
Shovel ready, as they say. Right, Andy, thanks very much. Well, today's confirmation that the project will go ahead will mean more certainty for businesses that have already moved to or invested in the region, and it has the potential to attract much more money too, as our business correspondent Mark Goff now explains.
HS2 has finally been given the signal to proceed, and work will now accelerate. A bridge is being built here near Solihull, with the main terminus here at Curzon Street in Birmingham. In just building the line, it's estimated that 10,000 jobs have already been created. But business leaders, who've been waiting a long time for the green light, believe it'll bring much, much more.
And not just about having sort of railway stations there, it's all that goes around those, and it's the confidence that it gives investors to be sort of sinking their money into the West Midlands is phenomenal. We need that now more than ever.
The West Midlands Combined Authority today said that HS2 would now trigger 100,000 new jobs in the West Midlands, tens of thousands of new homes around the HS2 stations, and bring £14 billion to the economy. But Doug Oakervey, in his review into HS2, which was finally published today, said it's been hard for this review to assess the likely size of impacts on regional economic growth that will result from HS2, and that further work should be done by HS2 and the government to understand these impacts. This hotel, alongside what will become Curzon Street Terminus, is owned by an Irish company.
It supported our business plan in terms of our acquisition of the Clayton Hotel here in Birmingham, and also further then our second hotel, which opens up near the mailbox in 2022. So by 2022 we'll have 500 bedrooms in Birmingham, and we see that HS2 will bring a broad kind of bigger commercial market. It brings a whole new market to the city in terms of the infrastructure links to London, in terms of our links to Europe. So we see this as a very, very positive step with the, hopefully, announcement of HS2 moving forward.
Work alongside the hotel continues apace now that the London to Birmingham leg of HS2 has been approved, with a price tag of between £35 and £45 billion. The other parts of HS2 to Manchester and Leeds are on hold for 6 months while the government reviews them, keen to avoid a repeat of the overspend which has dogged HS2 so far. Mark Goff, ITV News.
Well, when it comes to HS2, there have always been concerns expressed, not just about the costs or delays, but also about the impact on people and their homes, as well as the environment. HS2 Limited has always maintained that its ambition was to build the most sustainable railway of its type in the world. But that argument doesn't sit well with those who see land dug up, wildlife displaced and ancient woodland destroyed, as Catherine Reid now reports.
Their message couldn't be more obvious, but it's one these campaigners say is being ignored. This ancient woodland in Covington near Leamington Spa is one of dozens that will be directly affected by HS2.
So we're coming up to Camp 1.
For months, people have been camping out here as workers start construction around them. But today's announcement has only cemented their position.
But what they're doing with this project is, I mean, it's pure insanity. Most people can see that. You know, if they're in their sort of shiny tower, churning money into it, it's fine for them. But come out into the real world.
They say HS2 will irreversibly damage this woodland, and some of its most unique features will be lost.
So this tree is quite an interesting tree.
Yes, that's the Covington wild pear tree. It's over 250 years old, and in 2015 it was voted the England Tree of the Year. It still bears fruit, and unfortunately it's going to be taken out, removed by HS2. They have offered to make it into a park bench, but that is no compensation and is an insult.
And if we take a look over here, there were all these trees that have been planted. That is to sort of offset the trees that they're going to be taken out, is it not?
Yes, I mean, these saplings have been planted to replace these ancient and established trees, but this is their second attempt at getting them to grow.
HS2 says it will plant 7 million trees along its route, and that its green corridor will help integrate it into the landscape. But wildlife groups, including the Wildlife Trust and the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, all echo a similar message. Nature is paying too high a price.
It is incomprehensible that anyone could possibly suggest that we need to cut more of this ancient woodland, this irreplaceable, precious resource and habitat down. It makes no sense whatsoever, and it flies in the face of everything that Boris Johnson has said in terms of protecting the environment going in the future.
People say, well, we're only losing a couple of % of our ancient woodland overall. Yeah, if you look at it nationally, that includes Scotland and Wales, which have a massive percentage. For this community, they're losing 30% of their ancient woodland. And this is where people walk out of the town, out of the villages, and this is the countryside that they go through. And it's the same all the way along the line. This isn't just a local NIMBY story.
But it's a story that, for these campaigners at least, might just end in tragedy. Catherine Reid, ITV News, Covington.
Well, many of you have been getting in touch with us today, and I'll go through some of those comments now. We'll start with Alan Bartlett, who says, if it's going to be so good for business, then let the business community pay towards it. It'll be fast trains with high fares and nobody on them, he says. Linda James says, people on minimum wage won't be able to afford it. We can't afford to use the trains now. Malcolm Selby says, money could instead improve the current infrastructure. And then Paul Shaw says, this is something that's only going ahead because construction work is already taking place. This will come back to haunt us. Well, thank you to everyone who's been in touch. And if you want to share your views with us, you can find us by searching ITV Central on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. Now, a little bit earlier on today, Boris Johnson stood up in Parliament and had this to say when he came also to Curzon Street and took a visit to the site here.
It's fantastic to be here in Birmingham, and can I just say, if it hadn't been for the continuous lobbying of Andy Street, Mayor of Birmingham, I'm not sure we would be here making the progress that we're making today. So I'm very pleased that we're doing this. It's a magnificent project for the whole country.
Well, praise indeed for my next guest. I'm joined now by the West Midlands Mayor, Andy Street. And Andy, you've heard all those comments that I was just reading out now. What's your response to them? Because they seem quite negative, really.
Yeah, well, I think the reaction is very mixed today, if we're very honest. And that reflects what's been going on over the last 6 months, that there have been the naysayers and the advocates. I was clearly an advocate, and I'm very pleased that the Prime Minister has given a decisive decision today. And what we've got to demonstrate over the next few years as this is constructed and then operated is that, dare I say it, the negative comments are misplaced. And the first way we do that is about providing jobs for local people in building this, because that's how it becomes directly relevant to our viewers tonight.
Let me talk about value for money, because earlier on in Parliament, Boris Johnson did say that the costs have exploded. Now, I keep hearing these words, it's value for money. How can it be value when you don't really know what the costs are going to be?
Yeah, so let's just explain that. And you'll know I was a member of the Oakerby panel that reviewed this and put our recommendations in, and the Prime Minister said good job was done, and I think that weighed on him. And what I therefore saw was this value for money calculation. The actual cost of it at the moment is £85 billion. Some say it could be more, not denying that, but the calculation was done on 85 billion. And then it said, what are the benefits? And that was really about the benefits around the economic regeneration that it will provide, and of course the benefits that come from a better local rail service here, Manchester, Leeds, all of those things. And then it said, that's how much it's costing, how do we go? And there's also a piece about when we spend this money. We're not spending it all at once. It'll be spent over about 20 years and paid back probably over 50 years. And that's how the calculation is done.
What about the management of this project? That's come under a lot of criticism, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, and I'm sure even if the chairman of HS2 was sitting here at the moment, he would say there's some things they have not done well enough over the period, and I'm not here to defend them. What I do believe, though, is that now the decision has been made, the contracts have been awarded, they have got to deliver for that price, particularly on the first phase, where we've done a tender. You know how it is in any job at home. If you get an estimate, you expect your contractor to deliver for that. Exactly the same here. So they've got to demonstrate they can now hold that price.
Also the environmental issues, which we touched on just now. How are you going to address those?
So that's hard, and of all the things that are put to us, I think this is the hardest one of all. Firstly, I should just say there have already been huge environmental considerations. So if you think of one of the reasons why this project is costing so much is this huge amount of tunnelling along the route precisely to protect the environments above ground. So that's already a consideration, evidence that there's a price put on the environmental concerns. Then of course there are some advantages, environmental advantages. I hope that when this line is open, the idea of flying from Manchester to London will be absolute history. So that's a big environmental benefit. And what we're also committed to doing, or more precisely HS2 Limited are committing to doing, for every single tree that unfortunately is cut down, it will be replaced at least with one, if not more than one new one.
Let's talk about the connectivity for a moment. I mean, right here with Curzon Street, I mean, you won't cross a platform to get to it. You'll have to cross several hundred yards to get from New Street to Curzon Street.
Yep, so there's Moore Street as well, of course, where it'll all be connected in directly, a new walkway very close. And then we're just thinking still about exactly how New Street and Curzon Street will be connected. There will, of course, be the metro that will connect into the rest of the network, and we'll go round to New Street as well. But the key point about this is the whole of the West Midlands transport network will then be linked into these two stations.
And I have to say the Prime Minister didn't make any mention of the Midlands Engine Rail when speaking in the House today.
No, but he did in one or two questions that we've just taken with him privately here. And actually, his manifesto for the last general election was very clear, a government commitment to support Midlands Engine Rail. And just so people know what that's about improved connections between Birmingham and Leicester, Coventry and Leicester, more local services coming into New Street. So I think that's a different matter, but there is a clear commitment to doing that as well.
There's also mention, of course, of a £5 billion cash injection to overhaul bus and cycle links in the regions outside London.
Yes.
Music to your ears?
Music to my ears. Because we've always said, and there's a very important point behind this, Bob, HS2 is not the solution to everything on its own. Of course it's not. And if you're getting a bus through the Black Country, people will think that's very, very different. So we need this as well. That's the crucial thing.
You don't think it's just buying off some of the objections?
No, I think we heard a lot from Boris about this. Right? You might call him a bus devotee, really, almost an anorak, really. And he brought in the famous the new design bus in London. He really believes this, for connecting communities together. Heard him talking about it today, and I'm hoping that we will see part of that investment here.
Well, you were down with him at the Curzon Street site earlier today. You had a chat with him. What was he saying to you?
Well, he said I'd been a bit of a pain, to be honest. I kept lobbying for this, but that's probably a mixed blessing. Yeah. But he was actually very interested in talking to the apprentices as well about the jobs that are going to be created here. And he was also very interested in just how quick this is going to be to London.
And this is all very good for your campaign for the mayoral hustings.
That's not really the issue of the day, is it? But I do think there's a point behind this. This job, being West Midlands Mayor, is about representing the region, championing the region. This is tens of billions of pounds coming into the region today. So I do think I should have got on my train or bike or bus and whatever, gone to Downing Street and lobbied hard and championed for this.
Indeed. Andy Street, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, listening in to that interview is our political correspondent, Alison Mackenzie. Alison, your thoughts?
Well, yes, Andy Street has always put a very passionate face and voice for the West Midlands down here with Boris Johnson and the whole cabinet. He's certainly championed the case. He'll be celebrating. But Boris Johnson also well aware of those people along the route and next to the railway who are concerned about its impacts, and he insists that he has their views very much in mind. He talked about this £5 billion for cycleways and bus routes. That very much on his agenda. And Rachel Maclean, the Redditch MP, she was on her feet today saying, why can't Redditch be the very first town to be completely clean bus technology? So lots of voices in favour of this transformation in transport and the revolution to come, but also a reminder of the spiralling costs. That will be a very big issue for Boris Johnson as he pushes this through. So I suspect we'll be here for many more weeks, months, hopefully not years, until the big decisions are taken. But it's been a momentous day for the West Midlands and HS2. The Prime Minister finally says yes.
Alison, thank you for that. Well, that's it from us tonight. Des will be here with the weather forecast for you in just a moment, while the ITV Evening News follows us with more coverage of the HS2 announcement. We'll be down the line at 10:30 and we'll be bang on time for you at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. Have a pleasant one. Bye-bye.